This tutorial will explain how to calculate the volume of a cylinder. The general formula we have, as you can see written up top here, is the capital B represents the area of the base, which in this case the base is a circle, so we do the area of a circle, which is pi r squared, times the height. And that height, it would be the height of it if it was standing up on its base. So now when we get started, the radius, which is halfway across the circle, that's the radius, would actually be 1.5 in this case. So we're going to do 1.5 squared times the height, which in this case is 8. Order of operations, we'll do 1.5 squared first, which is 2.25. And what I'm going to do before we multiply the pi in, which makes a really ugly decimal, we call those irrationals, is we're going to do 8 times 2.25, which is going to be 18. So the volume of this is really just 18 pi. The units would be cubic centimeters. If we need to round this to the nearest tenth, which the instructions will sometimes say, we can actually use a calculator to do 18 times pi. Now when we use the calculator, I'm not doing 18 times 3.14. I'm actually using the pi button. And what the calculator told me when I did 18 times pi is I'm approximating this to get 56 5/10 cubic centimeters. The next question I wanted you to see, because the cylinder is actually laying down, the radius in this case, which would be halfway across the circle, is half of 21. So you can just do 21 divided by 2, which will give you 10.5. So substituting in, the radius is 10.5, and we square that. The height actually looks short here, but if this was laying on its base the usual way, that height is actually 8 yards. So we'll finish off with times 8. Now using the calculator, 10.5 squared would actually be 110.25. So we have pi times 110.25 times 8. Now I'll multiply the constants we have, the 110.25 times 8. And that gives us a product of 882 times pi. If we wanted to finish, we could just leave the answer in terms of pi. That would be 882 pi cubic yards. But if we use the calculator to approximate and do 882 times pi, this would give us a value of 2,770 and 9/10 cubic yards. And again, using the pi button on the calculator, not using 3.14. The last example, you actually see a cylinder has been hollowed out of the inside, and this is actually just the concept of subtraction. Because we have this cube, and it's almost like hole punching, we're going to subtract that volume out of the inside of it. So we have two parts here. We do have to do the volume of the cube. This is actually easy because the volume of the cube would be length times width times height, which is 12 times 12 times 12. So the volume of the uncut cube is 1,728 cubic millimeters. And what we're going to have to do is calculate the volume of that cylinder that's on the inside so we can subtract that away. Now the radius of that cylinder would actually only be half of the 2, because you can see that diameter is going all the way across. So the radius with this would actually be 1, which makes for a really easy calculation. And the height of this would be the same as the height of the cube, which would actually just be 12. You don't even need a calculator for this. 1 times 1 is 1, and then 1 times 12 is 12. So we find the volume of that cylinder to be 12 pi. To get our final answer, we are going to subtract, and as we said earlier, that's going to be 1,728 cubic millimeters for the cube, and we're going to subtract from that 12 pi. Using the calculator carefully, this would give us a final answer of 1,690 and 3/10 cubic millimeters. The one thing on the calculator is you would have to maybe calculate that 12 pi first and then subtract that from 1728. I hope this tutorial has been useful, and if you've watched it, you should have a good base and be very prepared for class tomorrow. Thanks.